You used to see your grandfather eating a ground beef sandwich every single day and thought, that must be his favorite meal. But as you grew older, you began to understand why he ate it so often. In the 1970s, when whole cuts of meat became a luxury during an economic crisis, ground beef became the go-to lifesaver. It was cheap and could be stretched into enough food to feed a large family. Comment 1 and join me in looking back at 25 ground beef dishes that once filled dinner tables across America, but hardly anyone cooks anymore. Number 1. Porcupine meatballs. In early 1972, in church basements across Ohio and Pennsylvania, porcupine meatballs were practically mandatory at potluck dinners. These ground beef meatballs mixed with raw rice were jokingly called porcupines because the rice would poke out like little quills during cooking. The dish showed up often in the lunch boxes of steel mill workers and railroad repairmen. The reason was simple. A pound of ground beef usually cost under $1, enough for housewives to stretch into a full meal for a family of 5. Rice was cheap and filling, and canned tomato sauce was available in every supermarket by 1970. In the morning, the wife would cook a pot, let it cool, and portion it into tin lunch boxes. By midday, the husband would pop the lid open amid the noise of machines and eat the soft, tomato-rich meatballs, still carrying the scent of home cooking. This wasn't a fancy dish, but a symbol of making do in a time when inflation topped 10%. Number 2. Salisbury steak. In 1974, as the price of whole cuts of beef soared across the Midwest, Salisbury steak became the go-to fake steak in many workers' lunchboxes. Made from ground beef mixed with breadcrumbs and eggs, shaped into oval patties, it gave the feeling of eating a real steak at half the cost. At car assembly plants in Detroit, many workers brought cold Salisbury steak with mashed potatoes from the night before. The thick brown gravy was made right in the skillet from beef drippings and flour, helping the meat stay moist even when chilled. Kids believed their dads were eating steak for lunch, while the adults knew it was a way to save face during hard times. Salisbury steak represented a very American desire that even in poverty, a meal should still look like a proper dinner. Number 3. Old school goulash. In Illinois in 1971, when night shifts ran late and grocery money had to be counted by the penny, American-style goulash was the go-to solution for both dinner and the next day's lunch. The name goulash was borrowed from the famous Hungarian stew, though the recipe had been completely simplified. In post-World War II American cafeterias and home kitchens, any dish that mixed beef, pasta, and tomatoes in one pot ended up being called goulash. This wasn't Hungarian goulash, but a mix of ground beef, dried pasta, and canned tomatoes all cooked together in a single pot. It was usually scooped straight from the pot into plastic lunch containers. Factory workers and truck drivers ate it because it was filling, cheap, and could be eaten cold. The pasta soaked up the tomato sauce and beef fat, getting more flavorful the longer it sat. For many, the smell of cold goulash at lunchtime brings back memories of evenings gathered around a green electric stove, the radio reporting on inflation and war, and a pot of goulash bubbling just enough to feed everyone for one more day. Number 4. Tater Tot Casserole. In Minnesota in 1973, if you opened the lunchbox of a teacher or office worker, there was a good chance you'd find Tater Tot Casserole. This dish combined 3 icons of 1970s cooking: ground beef, canned cream of mushroom soup, and frozen tater tots. It was baked the night before, cut into squares and wrapped in foil for work. People ate it in the break room, often next to the humming coffee vending machine. What made it so popular was its convenience. No recipe needed, no real cooking skills, just an oven and a tight budget. The tater tots crisped up again, even when cold, and the cream soup kept the beef moist. Meal number 5 is the kind of food that makes you picture a time you'd never really want to go back to. Number 5. Sloppy Joe. In 1975, across industrial zones in California and Texas, Sloppy Joe was a highly practical lunch. Picture yourself leaning against a wooden crate behind a job site, hard hat at your feet, unwrapping wax paper soaked with red sauce. Ground beef was cooked with ketchup, Worcestershire sauce, and a bit of sugar, then stuffed into a soft hamburger bun. No fork or knife needed, just 2 hands and a napkin. Construction workers and plumbers chose Sloppy Joes because they could eat standing up. No long break required. The sauce would soak through and make the bun soggy, just like the name Sloppy says. Many remember opening their lunchbox to find the sandwich cold, but still rich with the sweet tomato and beef aroma. Sloppy Joe became more common as wages struggled to keep up with the cost of living, because it turned cheap ground beef into a meal that looked generous. For kids, it was a school cafeteria classic. For adults, a rushed lunch between 2 hard shifts. Number 6, beef and biscuit bake. In the early 1970s, for many working-class American families, beef and biscuit bake was the go-to rescue meal when one dish had to feed everyone. Ground beef was browned with onions, seasoned with pepper, and sometimes mixed with a can of cream of chicken soup to add thickness. This mixture was poured into the bottom of a baking dish, then topped with canned biscuit dough, usually Pillsbury, the kind moms kept in the fridge after snagging a half-price deal at the supermarket over the weekend. The dish was baked the night before until the biscuits puffed up golden and soaked up the beef fat. The next morning it was cut into squares, wrapped in foil, and packed into lunch boxes. Factory workers, maintenance crews, and warehouse staff ate it cold and still felt full. The beef rich underneath, making for a simple lunch that had the strength to carry you through a full workday during a time of rising prices. Number 7, beef and rice skillet. In 1971, out in West Texas, between cotton fields and dusty oil yards, beef and rice skillet was a familiar lunch for outdoor workers. The night before, ground beef was browned with onions in a big skillet, then mixed with pre-cooked white rice and a few cans of tomatoes from the local store. Seasoned only with salt and pepper, it was all simmered together until the rice started to soak up the beef fat. Early in the morning, the dish was scooped into plastic lunch containers and sealed tight. Comment 1 if you still remember those Tupperware, Rubbermaid, or Aladdin metal lunchboxes from back then. By lunchtime, under the shade of a parked pickup near the fields, the rice had absorbed all the sauce, firmed up into a solid block, and was eaten fast with a spoon. Nothing felt better than holding a warm lunchbox in your hands, each bite packed with the salty, slightly tangy, familiar richness of home. Number 8, hamburger gravy with mashed potatoes. In 1972, in the industrial towns of Ohio and Pennsylvania, lunch for mechanics and steelworkers was rarely fancy. Hamburger gravy was the thing they knew best. The night before, in a small kitchen after a long shift, ground beef was browned in a cast iron skillet, broken up fine, then flour was sprinkled straight into the hot fat. Milk was poured in slowly, stirred until it became a thick, heavy brown gravy. That gravy was spooned over pre-made mashed potatoes, cooled, then packed into a lunchbox the next morning. By break time, all you had to do was pop the lid and dig in with a spoon. The gravy stayed warm, the mashed potatoes calmed a hungry stomach. The smell of cold hamburger gravy brings back memories of old Formica countertops, the sound of spoons hitting pans, and evening newspapers reporting gas prices creeping up day by day. Number 9, meatloaf sandwich. Around 1974 in Michigan, for assembly line auto workers, lunch was the most anticipated moment of the day. The only time they could sit down, take off their gloves, and step away from the non-stop rhythm of the machines. The meatloaf sandwich was usually made by a wife or mother the night before. A cold slice of meatloaf was placed between 2 pieces of white bread, sometimes with a smear of yellow mustard or a slice of raw onion if the kitchen had any left. Plenty of people remember the moment at lunch when they opened the wrong box. only to find that two co-workers had brought the exact same meatloaf sandwich, down to the wax paper and the scent of the meat. They'd laugh, swap halves, and joke that there must be only one recipe in all of Detroit. Number 10. Beef and macaroni skillet. Beef and macaroni skillet isn't tied to a specific year or place, because it showed up all across the Midwest and Rust Belt and working families who spent their days in warehouses and freight yards. It was a reliable lunch, filling, cheap, and easy to make. This dish also regularly appeared in school cafeterias under names like American chop suey or goulash, scooped from metal trays with plastic spoons. It didn't belong to holidays, but was a familiar face at church potlucks and community fairs, anytime someone needed to cook a big batch to feed a crowd. No one really knows who invented beef and macaroni skillet. It came from Americanizing Italian pasta and tomato stews, adjusted to fit the average family's budget. People loved it because it only needed one pan, still tasted good cold, and could fill many stomachs when ground beef was the most affordable option. Number 11. Beef stuffed bell peppers. Comment 1 if you're someone who doesn't like bell peppers but could still eat stuffed ones. In the 1970s, when both parents were working, this dish became popular because one cooking session could cover 2 meals. At night, ground beef was mixed with rice, tomatoes, and onions, then stuffed into peppers and baked in a tray big enough for the whole family. Everyone ate it hot around the small kitchen table, and the rest stayed right in the tray. The next morning, Mom would slice a pepper in half, wrap it in foil, and pack it for her husband or child. By lunchtime, the pepper was cold, softer, and the flavors of meat and rice had blended together. Number 12. Hamburger casserole. No one called this dish by the same name. It was simply last night's casserole. Between 1973 and 1975, when inflation in America passed 10%, hamburger casserole became a familiar way to stretch ground beef. A large dish made with beef, pasta, canned soup, and a little cheese was baked in the evening, then cut into squares for the next day's lunch. Warehouse workers, packers, and retail staff brought their portions in plastic containers. By lunchtime, the casserole was cold but still firm, easy to eat, and didn't need reheating. Many remember the feeling of opening their lunchbox to find the same thing the whole family had eaten the night before. Number 13. Beef hash. Beef hash often showed up in the worn lunchboxes of mechanics and early shift workers. Ground beef was fried with chopped potatoes, onions, and a bit of salt and pepper, all cooked together in one skillet. There was no sauce, no toppings, just a dry, solid mix that filled you up. People who ate beef hash usually sat against a warehouse wall or on the shop steps, eating quickly so they could rest. The potatoes kept you full. The beef gave that sense of having eaten meat. For many who grew up in the 1970s, beef hash is tied to memories of quiet lunches, where the only sounds were chewing and machines humming in the background. Number 14. Ground beef chili. In the cold winters of the early 1970s, ground beef chili was a go-to warming dish for many American families. A big pot was simmered over the stove on the weekend, made with ground beef, beans, tomatoes, and chili powder, bubbling quietly through the afternoon. The whole family shared it for dinner, spooned over bread or eaten with crackers. Leftovers were packed into thermoses or large containers to be eaten the next day. Kids ate cold chili at school. Adults reheated theirs after work. In 1974, many families turned to chili because it was cheap, easy to make in large batches, and especially useful during a time when rising fuel prices meant homes stayed cold. Number 15. Beef sliders. In the 1970s, beef sliders weren't bar food or party snacks. They were small sandwiches made from leftover ground beef patties from dinner. Moms would cook a few extra mini patties, let them cool, then tuck them into small buns the next morning for kids to take to school or husbands to take to work. Short shift workers and retail employees liked them because they were quick to eat, no need to sit down. For kids, a slider was a light lunch in the school cafeteria. For adults, it was a grab-and-go bite in the car. Many people still remember the feel of wax paper soaked with grease and the slightly flattened bun from being stuffed in a coat pocket. Beef sliders captured the spirit of the 1970s. Small, simple, and always a leftover from something else, just like the way many families lived when everything had to be stretched and planned. Number 16, stuffed cabbage rolls. In many Eastern European American families across the Midwest in the early 1970s, stuffed cabbage rolls were a cook once, eat for days kind of meal. Cabbage leaves were blanched until soft, then rolled around a mixture of ground beef, rice, and onions, and simmered in tomato sauce all Sunday afternoon. This dish was usually made by mom or grandma, back when the whole family still had time to gather around. By Monday, each roll was wrapped in foil and packed into lunch boxes. At lunchtime, the cabbage had soaked up the sauce, turning soft with a slightly tangy flavor. Kids sometimes felt embarrassed bringing it to school because of the smell, but adults appreciated its practicality. This was the kind of meal made by families who planned ahead, stretching beef with rice and vegetables to last the whole week. Number 17, ground beef and potatoes skillet. In working-class families across the Rust Belt during the 1970s, ground beef and potato skillet was the go-to midweek dinner. Ground beef was browned with onions, then thinly sliced potatoes were added to soak up the fat and salt. There was no fancy sauce, just black pepper and sometimes a pinch of chili powder. The dish was usually served straight from the skillet, with each person scooping out their share. Leftovers stayed right in the pan and were cut up the next morning to pack into lunch boxes. By lunchtime, the potatoes had become soft and stuck to the beef, still tasty even when cold. Number 18, beef stuffed zucchini. As backyard gardening became popular in the early 1970s, zucchini became a staple ingredient in many suburban households. The squash was sliced lengthwise, hollowed out, and filled with a mixture of ground beef, breadcrumbs, and tomatoes. It was seen as a way to eat your vegetables and still feel full, perfect for families trying to save money while still eating something that felt healthy. Salmon patties with a cornmeal crust were the queen of the 10-minute dinner rotation in American kitchens from the 1960s to the 1980s. Open a can of salmon, drain it, mash it with an egg, chopped onion, and whatever seasoning is on hand. Form into patties, coat them in cornmeal for a crispy crust, then drop them into a hot pan. That sizzle means dinner's already on its way. This dish showed up constantly in church cookbooks and greasy handwritten recipe cards made for meatless Fridays during Lent or any lean days when protein had to come from a can, not the butcher. Some may turn their noses up at it now, but back then salmon patties were a family favorite. Fragrant, firm, crispy on the outside, soft on the inside. Some dipped them in ketchup, others used tartar sauce, or just squeezed on lemon. It made its way into every meal of the day, and no one ever got tired of it. Sounds like a joke, but it was once a true lifesaver for last-minute parties and rushed lunch boxes. Just wash the celery, cut it into hand-sized sticks, and fill it with that bright orange spreadable cheese. Sometimes it was Cheese Whiz, other times pimento cheese, or even peanut butter, as long as it could hold its shape inside the celery groove. Sprinkle a bit of paprika on top like a magic dust, and suddenly it looked like a dish made on purpose. Each stick took less than a minute to make. 10 sticks in under 10 minutes gave you a tray of appetizers, crisp celery, rich cheese, and bright colors. This snack once showed up in homemaking magazines, passed down recipes, even ads from the 1960s. Do you remember those ads? Leave a comment below and let me know. Today, this might seem like a kid's snack, but it used to be a main dish. All you need is a slice of white bread, rolled flat with a hot dog placed in the center. Sprinkle some shredded cheese, then roll it up like a cigar. Pop it in the oven or under the broiler until the cheese bubbles and the bread turns crisp. That's it. 10 minutes at most. This dish appeared in post-war cookbooks and frugal flyers that taught people how to turn cheap ingredients into a proper meal. Some brushed butter on the outside to make the crust golden. Some added mustard or relish inside, or switched up the cheese depending on what was in the fridge. Usually served with tomato soup or carrot sticks to round out the meal. Some dishes on the party table weren't for everyone, but if you were used to them, you would spot them right away. Sardine spread was one of those dishes. Canned sardines were opened, drained of excess oil, then mashed in a bowl with a fork. They were mixed with mayonnaise, sometimes with finely chopped onions, a bit of pepper, or a few drops of lemon juice to mellow the flavor. There was no need to make it completely smooth, just enough to hold together while still keeping a slightly coarse texture from the fish. The spread was chilled before serving, then spread on salted crackers or small pieces of white bread. It was considered an appetizer because of its bold saltiness and moderate richness, helping to wake up the palate before the hot dishes arrived. For many older Americans, sardine spread brought back a time when canned food was trusted, and that strong, savory flavor carried a sense of practicality and thrift. Starting in the 1940s and 1950s, when processed cheese spread was introduced and promoted as a convenient, safe, and long-lasting food, it quickly became a go-to choice for hosting guests. This dish was clearly influenced by European snacking culture, where cheese and crackers were often served to start a meal, but it was Americanized by making it as simple as possible. The method hardly changed for decades. Salted crackers were taken out of the box and arranged on a plate. Cheese spread was scooped straight from the container, sometimes stirred a bit to soften, and placed in a bowl. No cooking, no seasoning needed. Cheese fondue appeared on American party tables as a trend in the late 1960s and became hugely popular throughout the 1970s. The cheese was usually Swiss or Gruyere, finely shredded and added to a pot with a bit of white wine and garlic, then slowly heated and stirred until it melted into a smooth, creamy mixture. The fondue pot was placed at the center of the table, kept warm with a small burner or alcohol flame. Cubed white bread was the most common item for dipping, sometimes joined by apple slices or boiled potatoes. Number 20, canned tuna canapes. Canned tuna trust in canned goods that defined American kitchens in the 60s and 70s. The tuna was opened, drained, and mashed gently in a bowl with a fork. It was then mixed with mayonnaise, sometimes with finely chopped onion, minced celery, salt, and pepper to taste. The mixture did not have to be perfectly smooth, just cohesive enough to spread. White bread or crackers were cut into small pieces, with a modest layer of tuna spread on top. For many Americans who grew up during that era, tuna canapes bring back memories of simple gatherings where everything was prepared quickly, but still with care. If this feels familiar and you want to keep reliving the foods that once filled the party tables, hit subscribe so you do not miss the next round of culinary memories. Every subscription is a small way to hold on to those old flavors before they disappear for good. Number 4, tomato aspic. If you grew up in an American kitchen during the 60s or 70s, chances are you've seen tomato aspic on a party table. Tomato aspic usually started with stirring gelatin into seasoned tomato juice, flavored with salt, pepper, a bit of lemon, and Worcestershire sauce, then gently warming it just enough for the gelatin to fully dissolve. The mixture was then poured into a metal or hard plastic aspic mold, the kind that was very common at the time. Comment number 1 if your family still has one of those molds. Before pouring, people would often arrange canned peas, carrots, and celery in the mold so that once it's set, the vegetables would be clearly visible inside the bright red, transparent jelly. The mold was placed in the fridge for a few hours until the aspic was firm, but still had a gentle wobble.